Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Janine Luby, aka Funny Wine Girl. And this week, I'm kind of getting back to a little bit of my quote unquote roots, even though I've only been doing this podcast for what, like 6 months, maybe 7 months. In the beginning, I was, drinking wine when I was recording it. Then I was recording in the morning and I thought maybe that wasn't good practice. So I was drinking coffee. And now I'm back to drinking I have my Chardonnay here. For those of you watching the video, it's my cupcake butter kissed. I just like the name of that, butter kissed Chardonnay. It sounds so pleasant, doesn't it? It is a smooth kind of vanilla hint, some citrus in there. It's buttery. And I thought because of the guest we have today, I do a little interesting fact about alcohol and election day. So November 2nd is election day, and I don't think there's anything too big on the ballot in Pennsylvania or locally, although I will find out from my guest in a minute because I'm not always on top of things. But I thought it was interesting. For the longest time, I remember growing up hearing about this, and even in my 20s, that bars and liquor stores were closed on election day. And I figured it had something to do with the whole process. I thought maybe they didn't want people to be too inebriated when they pulled the lever or whatever. But it dates back all the way to Washington. And I guess, can you imagine there was corruption in politics? I know it's hard. Sit down. That seems kind of a crazy notion, right? Well, apparently, way back when, and even up until somewhat recently, there was a case in Arkansas where politicians would trade alcohol for ballots. So that is how it kind of got started. And I truly thought this was still in place. But I guess in 1973, after about 100 years, Pennsylvania changed their laws so that if you were a bar that made about 30% of your revenue from non alcoholic beverages and food, you could be open. And then I think that even changed in 2001. So now, I guess it's pretty much drink up. We're not too concerned about politicians trading votes for booze. But I guess, and somewhat recently, a former Arkansas state rep was sentenced to a year of home detention and 3 years probation for trading chicken dinners and vodka for absentee votes. So there you go. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're looking for some free drinks, see if you can find those shady politicians. No, I'm kidding. All right, so I would like to introduce my guest for this week, who I'm super excited about. I think she's doing great stuff for my hometown, the city of Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'd like to welcome Scranton City Councilwoman Jessica Rothschild. Welcome, Jessica.
Oh, and thanks for having me, Janine.
Absolutely. I remember meeting you. I tell people, I like to promote people who I believe in and are doing a great job. And I think you are. I remember meeting you in the bathroom line at the old Whistles for people who've been around here a long time and is now Ale Mary's. I was there doing a story slam and you were, I guess you could say you were politicking. You were doing some campaigning and handed me your card. And I think it was then, I don't remember the year. You will remember the year, I'm sure, that you were campaigning to become a councilwoman in Scranton. So that would have been what, maybe 4 years ago? How long has it been since you were campaigning?
I'm 2 years into my term, so it would have been
Okay.
2019.
2019. Okay. And I remember you were very personable, very nice. And I love the fact that you are not originally from Scranton. You came to school at the University of Scranton, I believe, to get your doctor of physical therapy. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, that was something that actually resonated a lot with voters. I thought it would be held against me, and it wasn't typical for people not from the area to run for elected positions. And people were really excited about that. And it was something new. They all, said, "Hey, like this is a fresh, young face. We'd love to see you in this position." And so it was something that worked out really well for me. Think people were really tired of the same old recycled candidates and the corruption and nepotism in our local politics. And I was someone who wasn't a part of that. Even though I grew up in New Jersey, I did come out here for school to attend the University of Scranton. I started in 2007 uh, at an undergraduate level, but I was in the Doctor of Physical Therapy program, which is 7 years long. That I was at the university studying, and probably at first, earlier on, in college, like on breaks, I would go back to New Jersey, but then it got to the point where like this is where my where my life was, and so I'd I had my apartment and I'd just stay here. So I really consider myself having lived here in Scranton since 2007.
And you mentioned a lot of people were ready for that, which I think is great. Personally, I mean, I've lived here my whole life, but as someone who's lived here, I don't like the corruption either. I mean, I'm not a fan of the good old boys network. I mean, I guess obviously the people who like it are the ones who are benefiting from it, I would imagine. But I'm thrilled that you were elected. I was very excited that you got in, and I think fresh ideas, different approach. And I love the fact that for me, what I like is that you weren't from here, but you chose to stay here. So obviously there's a reason for that. And I'll say this as someone who's grown up here, and there's a lot of self-deprecation here, a lot of even like self-hatred of the area. And the problem I have with that is try to fix what you think is broken, or if it's so bad for you, please leave, because we need positivity. So I love that someone chooses. What was it about the area that made you want to stay, or it made it seem appealing or inviting to you?
Well, I mean, you hit part of the nail on the head there because I've always been a person who's enjoyed fixing things that are broken. That's probably why I'm a physical therapist. So you have a
Makes
broken
sense.
bone. Well, let's get that better. But there's other positions and things that I've gone into um, because I noticed that there was a problem and there wasn't anyone else stepping up to the plate, and I felt like I was capable of doing that. And that was the same thing that happened in this scenario with running for city council. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that my wife was a big part of me staying here too. She grew up in Dunmore. We met when I was in grad school, and uh, her family was still here, and so like having her, that was a big driver for me staying here too. um but we had considered other areas because there weren't as many opportunities here, like within my profession and what I specifically wanted to do. And so I actually work out in the Poconos and I commute out there, and that's worked for us for a number of years. But there were a lot of things that I loved and appreciated about Scranton, and things that were different compared to where I was from. One of them was just the people. Um, I really always loved how approachable people were and hospitable and friendly. That like you could walk down the street and people are asking how you are or introducing themselves, and you don't know who they are, and they feel comfortable doing that, and that's always been nice to have, and that like small town feel in a city of 70,000 plus people. Um, and then I think like the family is something that's really important here, and having those connections. So I've enjoyed that, and we have such like a beautiful city. I've always seen the beauty in it. I remember I used to walk down like either Mulberry or Linden Street going to class and just looking at like the backdrop, like the city, and then the hills and the mountains behind it, and that always drew me in, and the historical architecture that we have, just so many beautiful older buildings. I live in a Victorian home that's 121 years old. It's not something that you could really find, at least affordably, in other areas. So yeah, there was just a lot of things that drew me in and kept me here. Even when I was exploring colleges and visiting around when I was like 16, 17 years old, I it was the University of Scranton was the first campus that I had gone to. And then I had visited others, and I got into maybe like seven colleges and universities. And there was just something that kept taking me back to Scranton, and the feeling that I had gotten when I was walking around here. And so I guess it was fated.
Well, we're glad. I know I'm glad. I'm sure there are many people who are glad because I know, I won't bring up the specifics, but I posted something to Facebook recently. You reached right out to me and said, "Send me a message and see if I can help." I love that because I feel like that's been missing, for the most part, because I feel, a lot of people who live here may not want to admit it, but with the whole corruption idea, it's kind of the whole who you know, so you can hold a position and then not really do the work, which is we need to get rid of that. So I'm happy that you were elected. I'm thrilled that we have our first female mayor. I'm excited about that. And, sometimes it just discourages me that there's still those people who want the good old boy network and resist. But I think slowly things are changing and going in the right direction, which I'm thrilled about. I wanted to bring up, and sometimes it's like, should it be an issue or should it not? You were actually the first candidate, the first openly gay candidate to I guess I don't know about run for office, but definitely get elected in Scranton. And while it might be like, well, why is that something to bring up? But I think it might be important for representation and for young people who don't see themselves in certain positions of power. Do you want to address that as far as what that was like for you and why you think that might be important to at least just even put out there, that just for people to know?
Yeah, yeah, of course. And just going back to the first thing that you'd mentioned, it is getting less and less the people who um, do want the good old boys network. So that's something that I've really seen over the years, that you don't have as many of those people out there. As clear indication by my election, as well as the mayors and some other positions throughout the city. And I felt the same, where like you really shouldn't have to know someone special to get things done. And when I became a homeowner a few years ago, that changed my perspective on a lot of things. And I I didn't know who to go to for anything. I was asking, like neighbors who might have been in the neighborhood for a longer period of time, like how do I get this issue addressed? And that I really wanted to make it more accessible for people. Even younger people who are searching like the internet and resources in a different way than maybe someone else. So that was something that was always in mind for me. But yeah, so in terms of being the first like out LGBT person elected, probably in any um, real position in Scranton. I don't even know, maybe Lackawanna County, from what I'd heard, because I previously was president of Quality Pennsylvania, which was a statewide advocacy organization. So I worked with with uh, endorsing LGBTQ candidates and hetero or cisgender um, candidates as well, who were supportive of the LGBTQ community. And while I was there on the board, and so I knew a lot of the people that were running throughout the state, and there was always just like this empty pocket in Northeast Pennsylvania, and a lack of candidates from here. And then I also went on to serve on the board for the Victory Fund Campaign Board, which is a national board. They're based down in DC, and their sole purpose for their organization is getting LGBTQ candidates elected. And when I served on that board, it was really inspiring to hear about all of these candidates from across our country, and to hear to hear their stories and why they're running. And um, once again, just being disappointed that there weren't enough of us here in our area. So that was definitely like a driver for me running. And there will be people who will say like that perhaps I just ran based on that, or why do I need to talk about that part of my life? And those really people that don't understand. They're not a part of the community themselves, or maybe they don't have family members who are. But for the people who are, I mean, it is a really huge deal, to have that person to look to, or to think maybe that's like um, a position that they could be in someday. And I had received a lot of people reaching out to me, people who used to live in the area, and were like, maybe if you were, um, if you were elected when I was around, I would have stayed here, or I wouldn't have had as much of a difficult time. And so I take that role very seriously, and it, definitely was a part of the reason that I wanted to run. Like I said, we needed an LGBTQ person to represent the community and to have a seat at the table, um, because we can't trust other people to make the right decisions, or to push uh, things that are going to affect us in a positive way. And in fact, sometimes when we're not there, or our allies are not there, then you have people pushing things in like negative legislation that could harm us.
Mm.
So yeah, and actually, like while I've been on council, I've helped to pass a conversion therapy ban for our city, um, and among other things that I look to help to just show that like the city of Scranton is a welcoming place for LGBTQ people.
Now, just for those of us who don't know, and I've heard of it, but I'm not super familiar, conversion therapy band. So what exactly is that?
Yeah, called conversion therapy because it's not uh, really therapy, but it's something that's utilized to um, basically change the behavior of like LGBTQ people. So it could be like a gay person to stop them from having gay thoughts, or being gay, or transgender person. Um, so it's been shown to be really harmful to a person's mental health and well-being, to have gone through those forms of therapy. And in our case, what we've done in the city and what other municipalities have done throughout Pennsylvania and nationally in places where it's not enacted statewide, just so that we could protect people in our city, it only applied to youth uh, under the age of 18, minors, who might be forced into this by an adult. And then because of things with like religious freedom, we couldn't really put that on um, you know church groups, anything like that. It only applied to mental health professionals who are providing care. And um, so it's pretty specific as to who it applies to. And um, there are like financial consequences. So there's fines if it's shown that someone is uh, practicing conversion therapy on an LGBTQ minor.
Okay. Well,
So we
that I
want
mean, and that's I'm sorry, go
sorry
ahead, Jessica.
we want kids to feel safe going to a mental health professional and opening up about themselves. And I actually know from like my own experience when I was younger, and I like saw a counselor for some issues, and I had like discussed well, I avoided discussing that topic completely. And some of the things that were like stressing me out, making me anxious, was that because not because I was gay, but just because of the friend that I liked, and that whole situation. But I felt like I couldn't talk about that because I wasn't sure how the counselor would feel about it, and I wasn't sure if they would turn around and tell my mother. And so I was really concerned about that. But I mean, God forbid if I did, and then they tried to convince me that I wasn't gay and that I didn't like this girl. Like how much that could have impacted me. So I would just hate for anyone to experience that.
And it is important to protect the youth. So that's a really valuable piece of legislation. So I mean, the fact that there's a need for that kind of legislation. I mean, we know that unfortunately not everyone is positive, open-minded, loving, we could say. And I know I won't bring up, people's names or but from as being a resident here and seeing on the local news some of the nastiness and some business leaders or certain people in the community who've come out saying things about even about you because they say, oh, we don't want our children to have a gay agenda pushed or whatever the discrimination and hate is, and it's unfortunately still present. How do you, because you're a human being obviously, and that's got to be taken a little bit personally, but at the same time, I've spoken with you, you seem super level headed, and clearly you're trying to do things for the community, but you still have to, I'm sure, consider your own feelings. So how do you address when you see or hear what I will definitely call ignorance or hate, toward you or the LGBTQ community? How do you address that, or how do you move forward and still try and be the best that you can in your position?
Yeah, well, I guess I think of it as being just like a small, um, like so many few people who might feel that way that I tend to let it roll off my back. Like I don't really take it personally. I try not to let it affect me and what I'm doing, and I just keep like I, my goals in mind, and um, I, I don't know. I know that's not the majority of people who feel that way, but I do worry about how once again it would affect the community. So um, it, there have been times that I've been approached by bullies, and I certainly won't let anyone uh, bully me around. And so I'll still stand up for myself, but I tend to take the high road.
Yeah, and you definitely, I get that from you. You're not gonna be the type that's gonna go low. It's just unfortunate, like, when you do see things on Facebook and, different things, and you hope that they're really, like you said, it's the majority are people who are open-minded and who are accepting and loving, and that's, we need to keep engaging those people. And, but I'm sure it can be challenging, but I'm glad to know that I mean, you let it roll off your back and move forward, which is great, and you're
Mhm.
doing the best for the community. What would you say were some of the challenges that are facing our city as, going forward? Like I said, I'm excited that you're in office. I'm excited that Paige Cognetti is our mayor, and I think it's very progressive and moving in the right direction. What would you say some of the things coming up are as far as the future of Scranton, as far as from a perhaps a challenging perspective and some things you see turning that are a positive?
Mhm. Oh wow, there's so much that we're working on and that we want to do. I know there are things that I really want to see accomplished within the next few years personally that I think would help the city. Of course, that needs to align with what the mayor and her administration want to do because we're a strong mayor form of government. So um, there have been proposals that I've made of legislation, but like the conversion therapy ban, but we had discussions first, and I made sure that uh, the mayor would be on board with that as well. Um, but I mean, we have like the budgets on my mind because it's budget season, so we're waiting on getting that uh, from uh, from the administration. Then we'll have some discussions and work sessions on that. We'll need that done and passed by the end of the year. And it'll be really interesting to see where we put the ARP funds towards. So we had gotten a lot in ARP money, and um, we're looking forward towards seeing a plan for what we want to do with it and what's going to be the best way to use those dollars. Um, and uh, sorry,
What is ARP money, by the way, for those of us who don't know? What is that
um,
like federal funding or something, or?
yeah. So coming out of COVID, it's the American Rescue Plan, and
Okay.
I think it was like 68 million that the city of Scranton receiving in the ARP funding, and there are guidelines. We've actually been waiting for them to come out with the guidelines to make sure that we don't earmark it towards something that we're not going to be able to use it for. But as to like what things that it's going to be appropriate, but it'll be broad enough that really a lot of projects it could apply to. And so that's something that we'd really been hoping for, and people are excited about. And there are just so many different projects that we could think to use that on. But yeah, we definitely want to make that funding last. I feel like the administration right now does have more of a strategic long-term vision, and I feel like some administrations of the past have just been focused on the short term of the city, or on like dealing with various problems and issues that come up, where like in physical therapy, it's a lot harder to treat like a chronic issue that someone has had if they come in that they've had like back pain for 10 years and it's starting to get worse and difficult for them to deal with, as opposed to, say they had this injury 10 years ago and they had gotten like the help that they needed at that time. Then we could have really prevented some other issues from happening down the road, or from it becoming more of a chronic problem. So I kind of see that with the city too. We just have a lot of chronic injuries.
We have a lot of back problems.
And so I think that we're trying to do our best to fix them, but it's going to take time and vision, which I know I've had for where I want to see the city, and I'm really excited about the times that we're in, because it's I think people have more hope in terms of where we're headed. But some of the things even that I talked about in like when I was campaigning, and as someone who stayed here after college, I really wanted to see more of that in a way of like retaining college students and attracting younger people into our area. With COVID, that's one of the things that we've seen improved, that people are moving from larger cities into ours and working from home, and we've been doing some advertising to try to attract those people to do so. And right now like housing, the realting market, that's that's been booming a lot. A lot of people not selling their homes and moving out, but people moving in. So definitely wanted to see that influx. That's something that's going to help our economy, our local economy.
That's great. And I had a guest on about, I guess it's been about 2 weeks now, Tim Holmes, who, like myself, grew up here. He coordinated the office convention in 2007 and the office wrap-up party, or wrap party, I should say. And we spoke about, that and his time with the cast members of the office and how they've come back and what that means to the city. But like myself, he's very positive and hopeful, and he's always been for the city. And he mentioned that too, about how people are coming here and like the value you can get for a home here versus, in a big city, and how you can have like deer in your backyard, or you could see nature and you could work from home, which I think is great. And we talked about how like Scranton, and I've always thought this is located in a really great spot, because you could go to New York City for the day and be home. You could go to Philadelphia, enjoy a Phillies game or a football game or whatever it is. Baltimore, 3 hours. So we're really kind of centrally located, which I think is great, something great that you guys are using that kind of to appeal to people who could work from home, because I think it's a great location. I mean, budget wise and safety wise, yeah, like you had mentioned earlier, for a family to raise a family, I think it's great.
Yeah, and if the train comes into, if Amtrak does come through on that, then that will only add to it. I know there's still some fear among that, like you're gonna bring people in from outside of the area, and what's that gonna do, and the crime's gonna come in, and I, I that's I think a falsehood, um, that I hope to dispel.
Yeah, yeah, and that would be great. I mean, the thing about that, for those of us who've been here, like that's been talked about for such a long time that it's almost like, I say the boy who cried train, but we would love to see it, and I know it's been talked about, and a lot of people have been excited about it and working toward it. So I hope that comes to fruition at some point. That would be great. I think it would be an asset to the city for sure and for the citizens.
Mhm.
That would be great. I mentioned earlier, and because I'm somewhat ignorant about what's coming up November 2nd, is there anything big? I shouldn't say big because I'm sure everything is important, but what is actually on the ballot for Scrantonians and for Pennsylvanians on November 2nd? And so it's like a two-part question. That, if you could inform us, and the second part of just the importance and the value of casting our vote and why it's so important. Obviously, we know it was so important in 2016, 2020 for the presidential election, but sometimes local and state elections people kind of like go, they're not important. Why is it important that we get out there? And then, like I said, what is it that we're voting for on November 2nd? Because I honestly don't know. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so it's our municipal local elections, which are very important, but it's also so statewide. There's a Supreme Court judicial seat up, and then there are appellate seats, like on the Superior Court, and those can have such a big impact, and people don't realize, but they're the reasons that our butts were saved uh, over the past year, with Donald Trump, and the and that presidential election where Biden was elected, for people trying to overturn the election results. So without those courts, we would have been in like a bad situation there. Um, so that's just like really vital that people get out to vote for the courts. And then locally, there are some county positions that are up, and like I said, local. So on city council, we have 5 seats. Two of them were up 2 years ago, so that was mine, and then Councilman McAndrew's seat. And then there are 3 seats that are up currently. So there are people running for that. School board, um, there's the Scranton City Tax Collector, there's the county sheriff's race, county clerk of orphans. There's, yeah, just plenty of plenty of elections that are important, and um, people also don't realize that it's not the federal elections that will so much make a difference in their lives. It's the local. So when you're having an issue like with your garbage, or in your neighborhood, that comes to us, not it's not going to like your U.S. senator. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's all the more reason that people should really be aware of what's going on locally, because if you're going to sit there and complain about how you don't think things are right, but you're not actually going to vote for those people and educate yourself, then do you have a right to complain? I don't know.
Yeah. Now, I know I voted in, I think I forget exactly when it was. I think it was last year for Paige Cognetti to be mayor. Is that solidified? I'll be honest, I was confused only because I saw signs for someone else running. Is he running like as a write-in or something? I was confused if she had to be voted in again or something.
So that's right. There's the mayor's election, of course, and she does have a Republican opponent.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it is important that if we do want Mayor Cognetti to stay in office, that we do go out and vote.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah, because I wasn't sure about, because I know that there is someone running against her. So because right now she's not officially in her term, is that right? Is it still a temporary?
Yeah. Yeah. So she was voted in based on a special election. So this is her, um, yeah, first time. Well, not running, but yeah. So that was just basically 2 years from former Mayor Courtwright's term, and now this would be a full 4-year mayoral term. Mhm.
Okay, so she needs to win this to get the full 4-year
Yeah,
time in.
yeah.
Okay.
So basically, to continue the work that she's already started. Um, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Well, and I appreciate and what you made an excellent point that I've heard other people say, but we get all probably because of watching television caught up in the quote unquote bigger like federal because there's so much advertising and so many people talking about it. But to your point, it's the local elections that do make an impact in our lives. I mean, if we're complaining about a law, a rule, a fine, or whatever it is, it's like, well, we need to like you said, educate ourselves. Who is promoting what? Find out and then vote so that this is our home. This is what we need to be most concerned with because it touches us, I guess, the closest. So, yeah, so it is important November 2nd that we do get out and vote. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would just add that, like for city council, we have citizens participation where people living in the city of Scranton could come and speak for up to 5 minutes to let us know what their concern is, if it has to do with the city and the agenda. And we often just get the very same people attending our meetings, and so it's always nice when we can hear from other people as to what their issues are, and um, some things that have passed, we don't hear from people until after they've actually passed, and it's like, well, if you came to the meetings or knew what was going on the agenda or read like the articles in the paper that covers the meetings, um, then maybe you could have discussed that with us, and like we could have had a change in votes. So um, yeah, it's important that we hear the people and listen to them.
what is the best way you would say for people like so they know what is it public like in the paper or whatever to know like what's coming up on the agenda for the next council meeting? So if they did want to, address something like, "Oh, I should go to this one." Where's the best place they can go to get information like that so they can stay informed?
Right. So either the Scranton Times or our city website. So just scrantonpa.gov. So we do update that with the agenda items and backups to our legislation so that people um, could read more about it.
Okay, great. And that is important. Like you said, it's better to voice before something's passed, obviously, when you can do something and possibly make a change. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else? I'm with, for me, I had my little list of questions beforehand, and I think I touched on everything I wanted to ask you about. But is there anything else you wanted to talk about? I know for those listeners who may not know, you have a beautiful little girl, a daughter. So I'm sure that that's such a huge priority. I'm sure if there's, a wonderful reason for you to want to make Scranton the best possible place, right, that she can grow up in. So clearly you have the best of the city at heart and in your mind and what you're working toward. Anything that, any closing thoughts or anything that you wanted to share about anything?
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you mentioned that, like my daughter had come to mind. So yeah, she was born back in March. She's 7 months old, and it's just been like a really exciting time for us to have her. Although it's definitely juggling my full time physical therapy job, and then um, city council and family life is like a careful dance, but we've been managing, and I think doing pretty well. And I like to try to bring her to as many things that I can, and just kind of even though she's too young to understand, just kind of show her like um, what our lives are about. And um, I don't know. Yeah, I'm also open about like breastfeeding and challenges with that and doing all that at the same time. So I don't know. That's been like a lot of my life this past year. So
So you don't get much sleep probably.
Our daughter is sleeping better. It was, the first couple months that were rough, and then really uh, improved from there. But she's had like a little bit of a regression for the past few weeks. This like 7 month regression, which I think they say happens around when they're achieving like bigger developmental milestones. So I mean, she crawls all around. She's standing. She doesn't want to like go to sleep at night because she wants to stand in her crib. And then she's like waking up a little bit more. So yeah, not as much sleep as we had gotten before, but that's okay.
Yeah, and I to your point, taking her around, I know we saw you out at the Riverfest. I think it's great, and as she gets bigger, it's great that she will be able to enjoy these things that her mom has had a hand in, perhaps bringing about. So that'll be, I'm sure, something that you could be really proud of.
Yeah, it'll be really nice to share that with her. Oh,
Yeah.
and I did want to share too. I am more of a red dry fan, but I don't have a glass with me because, like I said, I'm breastfeeding, and maybe once she goes to sleep tonight, then then I'll have one. But yeah, that's my kind of wine.
So you're a red dry fan. Okay, so we talking Merlots or what's your favorite?
Yeah, Cabernet, Merlots. Yeah,
Okay.
the
Well,
Syrah.
I'm a white fan, but I like in the winter, in this kind of weather, when we start turning colder, I do like a good Shiraz or like a Petite
Yeah,
Syrah, Cabernet Sauvignon, something like that that can really warm your bones, you know? So,
yeah.
well, I hope you get to enjoy a glass when you can chill out later, maybe, and relax. Well, I want to thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us. Jessica Rothschild, I want to thank you also for what you're doing for the city. I know that you're engaged and that you have the best, our interests at heart, and I appreciate all that you're doing to help move us forward.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and let me know if you have any other questions or concerns, things that I can help with, and if I can't, then I can find someone who will.
Okay. Thank you again. And thank you so much for listening. This has been Funny Wine Girl Janine Luby. You've been listening to Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. And remember to get out there, get informed about your local government. Even if you're listening, you don't live in Scranton. I know I have listeners outside the area. Learn what's happening in your city. Educate yourself so that you can make informed decisions because it's up to us and we do have a voice that can be heard. And remember, here in Pennsylvania anyway, you can have a drink before you vote or after, however you want to do it. Thank you so much for listening.